Meghan Markle is once again dominating headlines, though perhaps not in the way she hoped. After her high-profile departure from royal duties, a less-than-stellar podcast run, and a string of Netflix projects that hadn't quite hit the mark, many expected her to retreat from the public eye. Instead, she chose a different path, unleashing a video that no one requested, showcasing something few wanted to witness. This particular digital offering ignited a firestorm, but not of admiration or praise. It exploded across the internet, drawing widespread attention, but for all the wrong reasons. The digital world was buzzing, and the sentiment was overwhelmingly negative. The catalyst for this latest spectacle? A video clip Meghan posted on Instagram. It featured her dancing with an almost frantic energy to some vintage hip-hop tracks, purportedly filmed 4 years prior during her pregnancy. There was no explanation, no caption to anchor the content, just a visual of her awkward movements, a seemingly desperate attempt to project a fun mom persona. One could practically sense the calculated desire for this to become a positive, viral sensation, a bid to be seen as relatable, edgy, or spontaneously authentic, whatever image she's currently striving for. However, the outcome was precisely the opposite: widespread discomfort. For almost anyone else, such a post might have garnered a handful of sympathetic likes before fading into obscurity. But this is Meghan Markle. Every action, every public appearance, every digital footprint is meticulously scrutinized, especially given her recent efforts to redefine her media presence. The moment this video went live, it was instantaneously shared across X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, and countless other platforms. The response wasn't, "Look how cool she is." It was a resounding, "What in the world is this?" The internet quickly devolved into a meme factory, churning out endless jokes and mocking parodies. The digital storm was brewing, and for Meghan Markle, the initial wave of public ridicule must have hit hard. Imagine the scene: a carefully curated online presence constantly battling a narrative spun by critics, suddenly undermined by a single ill-conceived dance. There would have been confusion, a genuine inability to grasp why this particular act of self-expression had backfired so spectacularly. She likely saw it as an empowering, even rebellious statement against those who've long mocked her. The immediate reaction from her inner circle might have been a mixture of panic and fervent defense, rushing to explain away the perceived misstep. But as the memes proliferated and the negative comments piled up, a deeper emotion would have set in: a simmering indignation. This wasn't just online chatter. It was a perceived attack, another instance of the world misunderstanding her. She would have doubled down in private, convinced of her own artistic merit, believing the backlash was simply further proof of a world determined to silence her authentic voice. The idea of removing the video, of capitulating to the online mob, would have been an anathema. It was her creation, her message, and to delete it would be to surrender to the very forces she felt were constantly trying to diminish her. However, the online mockery was merely the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, Meghan's seemingly innocuous post triggered a massive crisis at Netflix. Remember, Meghan was still bound by a substantial deal with the streaming giant, a partnership that was supposed to culminate in the much-anticipated With Love Meghan docuseries, a project designed to portray her as a thoughtful, insightful voice on topics like parenthood and personal growth. So, when a clip of her awkwardly moving to hip-hop music while pregnant suddenly surfaced, Netflix executives were thrown into chaos. Their reaction was far from amused. In fact, sources indicate they were absolutely livid. High-ranking figures, like Greg Peters, who had previously championed giving Meghan creative freedom, viewed this post as utterly irresponsible. It wasn't just off-brand, it represented a significant liability for the company. Whether she acknowledged it or not, Meghan, in that moment, was a representative of Netflix. Her online activity, especially as a public figure under contract with a major platform, directly reflected on their brand. The gravity of the situation prompted an immediate emergency meeting. Emails flew, urgent calls were made, and by the end of the day, Meghan received an unequivocal directive: remove the video. There was no attempt at gentle persuasion or diplomatic phrasing. It was a direct, unambiguous order to delete the controversial post. But then came the truly astonishing turn of events. She refused, flat out. Meghan stated she would not take it down, arguing it was her personal expression, a defiant gesture against years of public ridicule. She framed it as a way to reclaim the narrative, or some similar justification. To make a questionable post is one thing, but to then defy the very studio that holds your contract, that's an entirely different level of defiance. Netflix, understandably, did not take this lightly. Reports suggest they issued a stern warning. This was her final warning. Any further missteps of this nature would not only result in the non-renewal of her lucrative contract, but also a significant rollback of existing projects. And remarkably, that's precisely what began to unfold. The consequences were swift and brutal. Her plans for promoting With Love Meghan on social media were immediately scrapped. She had been preparing an extensive campaign, complete with behind-the-scenes footage, exclusive interviews, and interactive Instagram Q&A sessions. All of it was canceled on the spot. No posts, no promotions, nothing. Netflix began a deliberate distancing, essentially pretending the show didn't even exist until its eventual broadcast, a stark contrast to the immense hype they had generated just a year prior. But the cuts didn't stop there. Whispers began circulating that she had been completely barred from the editing room. Meghan had reportedly sought deep involvement in the post-production of her series, aiming to shape the message precisely as she envisioned it. Now she found herself entirely locked out of that crucial process. Netflix wanted her nowhere near it. They were quietly and systematically sanitizing their association, attempting to salvage what they could without igniting a larger public relations inferno. Meanwhile, Meghan was reportedly seething. Accounts suggest heated confrontations with executives, particularly Greg Peters, as she vehemently attempted to justify the video and assert her creative rights. But the damage was done. Even some of the executives who had initially championed her found themselves retreating, their support systems for her rapidly dissolving. All of this, the vanishing backing, the escalating tension, stemmed from a single video. One video that, in her perception, was empowering or an act of defiance to everyone else, her fans, her detractors, and crucially, the studio footing. The bill, it was simply a profoundly ill-timed and ill-advised decision from someone seemingly desperate to cling to the spotlight. The Meghan Markle PR machine, once a formidable force, was now sputtering. Unless her next move is executed with extreme precision, this incident could mark the beginning of a complete collapse. Netflix's concerns extended beyond mere optics. They feared losing control. The last thing they desired was to be entangled in Meghan's ongoing drama, especially given the existing internal pressures to justify her expensive contract in the first place. For months, executives had painstakingly cultivated an image of a mature, introspective Meghan Markle embarking on a new chapter. That carefully constructed narrative evaporated the moment her video dropped. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Some insiders claimed Greg Peters wasn't the sole source of frustration. Other board members, particularly those who had initially advocated for bringing Meghan aboard, openly voiced their doubts. Reports even suggested one senior executive bluntly stated, "She's becoming more of a liability than an asset." This sentiment began to ripple through Netflix headquarters. Suddenly, the entire partnership was under re-evaluation. Not just her show, but everything associated with her name. Even Ted Sarandos, who had largely remained neutral on her previous controversies, was pulled into the fray. Meghan had reportedly made direct appeals to him for support, desperately trying to salvage whatever influence she had left. But even his willingness to engage was gone. The studio had fully shifted into damage control mode, and no amount of star power or past goodwill would override that, at least not this time. In response, Netflix subtly but decisively tightened its grip. No official statements or grand announcements, but internally, the shift was unmistakable. Emails ceased, meetings were canceled. Any discussions about future collaborations with Meghan or Harry were put on indefinite hold. The promotional team received directives to downplay Meghan's involvement in upcoming campaigns. Her name, once a valuable selling point, had transformed into a significant PR risk. And it wasn't just Netflix that began to withdraw. Hollywood insiders watched the drama unfold in real time, and news travels quickly in that town. One talent agency even circulated an internal memo, cautioning against partnerships that might carry residual baggage from ongoing corporate fallout. Translation: steer clear of Meghan Markle right now. She's radioactive. Meanwhile, Meghan wasn't passively accepting the situation. She reportedly took the backlash deeply personally, lashing out behind the scenes about perceived unfair treatment. Friends close to her stated she genuinely believed the video was innocuous, viewing the outrage as yet another attempt to silence her voice. She perceived herself as a woman simply expressing joy and freedom, unable to comprehend why anyone would interpret it otherwise. But here's the critical distinction. Context is everything. When your identity is intertwined with a major corporation, when your public image is a cornerstone of a business agreement, every action carries weight and consequence. It transcends mere personal expression. Meghan may have felt she was being authentic, but Netflix was focused on safeguarding its bottom line. And at that moment, their priorities were on entirely different planets. Even some of her most ardent supporters began to question her judgment. Comment sections on online forums and fan pages, typically bastions of unwavering loyalty, showed a distinct shift. The usual defenders started posting remarks like, "This wasn't the smartest move," or "I love Meghan, but that video was not it." That devoted online army she could usually count on was noticeably thinning. People were beginning to realize that perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't always the innocent victim in these situations. To compound matters, the video was now being edited and remixed into forms that stripped away any semblance of dignity. It was clipped, slowed down, auto-tuned, and relentlessly transformed into viral meme fodder. With every repost, it gained more attention, but never the kind Meghan desired. She had attempted to control the narrative, but now, her own content was beyond her grasp. Amidst this maelstrom, With Love Meghan inexorably approached its release date. The glaring problem was that no one at Netflix seemed enthusiastic about promoting it anymore. Whispers suggested it might be quietly released onto the platform with minimal fanfare, almost as if they wished to bury it in plain sight. One employee reportedly remarked, "It feels like they're trying to disappear." That's hardly a ringing endorsement. Internally, the production team working on the series has also felt the immense pressure. Some staff members were reportedly frustrated, having dedicated months to crafting a show designed to present Meghan in a thoughtful, inspiring light, only for a 30-second Instagram post to completely derail the entire message. One editor even quipped, "We should have just made a dance video and saved everyone the trouble." As of now, Meghan reportedly remains steadfast in her refusal to remove the original post. She has made it abundantly clear that she will not be bullied or silenced, regardless of Netflix's demands. However, with each passing day, her leverage continues to diminish. The deals, the influence, the platform itself, it's all slowly slipping away. The industry watches keenly to see how far she will fall before she either manages a dramatic pivot or fades entirely from the relentless glare of the spotlight. The fallout from the video resonated far beyond the confines of Hollywood. By the time the story reached the broader media landscape, Meghan's ill-fated dance had been dissected by virtually every talk show, gossip site, and social commentator with an audience. While some attempted to frame it as quirky or misunderstood, the overwhelming majority weren't buying it. The dominant narrative was stark. Meghan Markle had once again veered off script. And this time, the cost might be everything. The video itself transcended a mere moment of questionable judgment. It morphed into a potent symbol of something larger, the perpetual tension between celebrity autonomy and corporate control. On paper, Meghan remained under contract with Netflix. In reality, she was now a rogue brand, operating purely on instinct, raw emotion, and an insatiable craving for attention. And studios abhor that. They demand consistency, predictability. Meghan was offering neither. Legal discussions reportedly began to surface between her representatives and Netflix's legal team. Nothing official, no lawsuits, but definite murmurs of breach of image guidelines and violations of agreed promotional protocols. This is legal jargon for, we're figuring out how to cut ties without igniting a public war. In Meghan's camp, frantic efforts were underway to spin this into some form of victory, perhaps even exploring a move to a platform where she could be unfiltered, whatever that ambiguous concept might entail. The profound irony lies here. The video would likely have garnered significantly less attention had she simply complied with the request to delete it. Instead, Meghan's staunch refusal to back down transformed a small PR hiccup into a full-blown brand implosion. The longer it remained online, the louder the clamor became. At one point, even professional comedians began to lampoon it. Impersonations, satirical sketches, endless TikToks. The video became a pervasive running joke. People weren't discussing Meghan Markle the activist or Meghan Markle the producer. They were talking about that peculiar dancing video. Amidst this escalating storm, her personal circle also began to shrink. Some of her usual celebrity allies went conspicuously silent. Publicists maintained a noticeable distance. No one wanted to be caught in the blast radius of her unfolding crisis. A few quietly offered advice: lay low, take a break, strategically reevaluate. Meghan, however, seemed disinclined to listen. She felt profoundly misunderstood, cornered. In private conversations, she increasingly doubled down on themes of authenticity and owning her narrative. There were even hushed whispers that she was contemplating launching her own media venture, something independent, bold, and entirely free from corporate influence. But the specifics remained vague, and more importantly, no investors were lining up to fund such an unstable endeavor. Investors crave stability. They demand structure. Meghan, at that moment, was anything but structured. As for Netflix, the quiet, cleanup operation continued. Marketing materials were systematically scrubbed. Press previews were indefinitely delayed. Internally, the mood was one of pervasive damage control. A few staffers reportedly began referring to the entire situation as the Meghan mess, a phrase that spread through internal communication channels like wildfire. Executives focused on minimizing exposure, ensuring no one could accuse them of endorsing the video or her behavior. And yet, amidst all the chaos, one undeniable truth emerged. Meghan had lost the room, not just at Netflix, not just with the broader public, but even with those who had once perceived her as a refreshing antidote to a world of carefully scripted personalities. What had started as a promising new chapter for her career was now closing with an awkward, deafening silence. No clear path forward, no major financial backers, just a cacophony of negative noise. Eventually, the relentless pressure began to subside. The internet, as it always does, moved on. New stories emerged, capturing the public's fleeting attention, but the damage had been irrevocably done. Meghan's standing in the entertainment world had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer the groundbreaking royal-turned-media darling. She had become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that being in the spotlight doesn't equate to controlling the narrative. Her show with Love Meghan did eventually get released, but it was done so with almost no fanfare. There was no press tour, no premiere party. Netflix launched it with the quiet desperation of a stone dropped into a deep pond, hoping the ripples wouldn't spread too far. Viewership numbers were, at best, modest, and critical reviews ranged from unenthusiastic to outright indifferent. Critics dismissed it as unfocused, overtly performative, and entirely out of touch. Audiences simply didn't stick around. Still, Meghan tried to maintain some semblance of momentum. She posted vague, self-affirming quotes on her social media pages about growth, strength, and embracing one's truest self. But the engagement she once commanded was gone. People had already formed their opinions, and this time, they weren't changing. In the end, Meghan Markle did achieve what she seemingly craved: attention. But it wasn't the kind of attention that builds empires or inspires movements. It was the fleeting, ephemeral kind, the kind that trends for a day, maybe two, before fading into the vast annals of internet history. For someone who once captivated global headlines with every single move, that might have been the most profound and painful consequence of all. Because true fame isn't just about being seen, it's about being taken seriously.